Namato Ratana Tayassa. May I pay homage to Triple Gem, the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha. My respect goes to my parents and my teachers. Hello, good evening, everyone. So today is 13th, Saturday, the 13th of March 2021, and this is Achan Sujan from Warapunya Meditation Center, Aberdeen, Scotland. As usual, I'm here with you all tonight. I'm sorry that my mind is just a little bit of tired because of all day teaching and engaging in other classes. So we had a children's class, a children's Saturday school, Dhamma school, and special chanting, and a meeting with so many people. So my mind is a little bit tired. I'm a little bit sleepy as well. So, as it says that nothing is permanent, everything is changing. And in this change, we have to learn to know things as they occur, as they happen, as they appears. The moment when we try to personalize, and then other problems will begin to creep in and will be in a trouble. Meanwhile, there is a lot of a possibility of a misunderstanding and a lot of a possibility of a little bit what's called a conflict in one another. So it's very important to be mindful that whatever we are experiencing, so we need to fully comprehend what's going on rather than engaging and rather than having this thought of me and mine. That's why the ultimate practice of a meditation is to question ourselves, understanding ourselves, and diving into to know who we really are. Who we really are, and that is the most important key. And normally what happens is that when we come across with different situations and different moments, normally we will feel, and on that feeling which is aroused due to our senses perceived or learned through the sense objects, which is I is seeing object and generates the feeling or understanding or observing and getting a knowledge. Ear comes to contact with, and that's how then again it gives us an understanding, it gives us a knowledge. Similarly, nose, tongue, and a body. So on the basis of that, we gain some form of feelings. And this feeling, what happens is that the moment when we have that feeling, we normally used to think about it, pondering on it, exaggeration. We will be thinking of that particular thing. And when we are thinking of that, what happens is that we perceive it as a reality, or not a reality, but we have our understanding, our interpretation that that is the right thing. So that's why in a practice, and the Buddha clearly instruct us to be mindful as we are paying attention to in the bodily contemplation or a feeling or mind or the phenomena. Whenever we are paying attention to these four establishment of a mindfulness, we need to be very carefully observing the sensations or feelings that arises, an ability to comprehend it in its entirety, that how this feeling has arose, what is the condition of it, that how it is arising. And when we look at carefully how these feelings are arose, then we realize that it is because our senses comes to contact with the outside or our sense objects. Without the sense object, there won't be any feelings at all. And understanding that, we will be having a clear knowing that this feeling has arose due to the based on the condition that is the conditioned. And understanding. So that's why it is quite important to understand that each feelings that we gain through the senses, through the contact, we need to know as they truly are, as it arises, rather than personalizing it, rather than emotionally attached to it. Sorry, my eyes is just itchy. So rather than personalizing it, understanding that how this is created with a mindful awareness, and how long does that last. And this lasting is, again, as I have mentioned previously, that this happens due to our thinking process, that how are we thinking on it, how we interpret it, our interpretation on that feeling that generally generates the emotion. That emotion, then we take it as the entity that is true, and we perceive it as the reality that we have we have experienced it, we have understood it. And that's how this remaining of these emotions is entirely based on how do we react. So that's why I always say that emotion is the reaction to the feelings that has arose due to the conditions comes together. And now if there is no condition, there won't be a feeling. When there is no feelings, then there won't be any clinging or any thought of dejection. And when there is no thought of acceptance or rejection, then there won't be any emotions too. And when there is no emotions, then we will not be thinking about it. We will not be having any perception about it at all. So that's why practice of meditation is to understand that how these one after another forms and how long will it stay. So that's why emotion will long last as long as we put our intention to remember it, our intention to continue it. But the moment when we understood that this is conditioned aroused, then we will be able to let it be, let it go. And that's how we will be able to see that this thought or of this feeling is just simply passing away, ending. But the moment when we do not understand it, what happens? You will be proliferating. You will be taking your own thoughts and understanding and exaggerating on top of the what is happening. Suppose a person or There is suppose a couple is fall in love with one another, and for some reason uh, they have some misunderstanding, and then that misunderstanding that generates the feelings. When that feeling arises, what normally happens is that the a person or the partner, he or she, will be creating the stories on the basis of what he or she have perceived in the past, and that causes a trouble, that causes the friction, and there will be a hard talking or hard speech rather than rational speaking. It will be a more emotional speaking, and when you are having a small emotional discussion with an angry or an unhappy face, what happens, we will be perceiving is as a truth, and that perception brings the friction and conflict, and will not be able to discuss or talk to one another. And that is how it happens. So that's why practice is something that helps us to recognize that the moment when it arises. So even further on, we have to recognize not just only the feelings of anything that we have perceiving, but also when the feelings arises at that time, what are we thinking of? How are we relating to that feeling? So that relationship with the feeling is not by somebody else, but it is you who connect with that feeling, related your feeling with your mind. And that's again, if we are good enough, mindful enough, then we will be able to see that mind is gradually bending towards that feeling and observing that feelings. And we will be able to even become aware that how deeply this mind is engaging with that feeling as it arises and as it maintains to entertain or engage with that feeling. And furthermore, if we are more aware, we will be able to see that how this is fading away. Similarly, the way we perceive things too. We whatever we are perceiving, again, there has been something or some activities are done, and on that basis we perceive it as the reality. And in relation to that, there are so many people disagree about the existence of the ghosts or spirit world. When you are going to talk about the spiritual world or a ghost world, they will be arguing that there is not such things exist. And meanwhile, there are people who could communicate, who could speak, and who could have messages from it, then they will confirm. And that's again, each one of us or each two these people will have a different understanding of the perception that they have. So each one of us, or each and every one of us has got our own perception, our own understanding, and own experiences too. So that when someone perceiving that there is nothing that exists such you claim, then that would be completely ignorance compared to someone who already have seen. It's like I remember, when my father was alive, it was like 15 years ago. And then at those days we have already big news, or we the traveling to the international space station, where this which is in the moon. It's very common, and for those who are studying the science, it is very common to all of us, and we perceive it as the reality. Reality is that NASA and has already established the International Space Center station in Moon. Well, actually, it is not the NASA, but I think it is belongs to the Russia. Russia established the International Space Station, and whoever goes there has to rent it. I think that's the way. But anyway, the story is that we believe that people have stepped on the moon, and there is an International Space Station. From there, people are traveling to other galaxies or other solar systems, Venus, and etc. Now, this fact my father would not accept at all. He said that it is impossible, it won't happen, because every day he will be paying respect to the moon, according to what he believed. So I remember when I mentioned that people have stepped on a moon, my father said, impossible. It can't be. It's so far away, and it is so respectful, and it's like a god, one of the goddess that emerge in every week. And today is one of that, is the quarterly moon. And my father would not accept that, because he always have that perception that this is something beyond our reach, and then there lies the some very powerful celestial beings, and we don't have any ways that we can convince, because he has perceived it as that perception. So based on that perception, then it was very difficult for us. Again, we never been there, and but however, we were taught, and we have read, and we have heard the news about it. We perceive that there is a possibility that people can attain in that state or go to the moon. And similar way, there are many people think that Buddhism is a non-theistic religion, and it is not a religion. It is a way of a life. It is not as a religion in such a way that people think about it as an external god or external entity who is out there looking after, checking on us. So that's why Buddhism is not taken as the religion. And this is again that perception they have, because the perception they were brought up. And on that basis of that perception, they believe that Buddhism is in that way. And similarly, again, for the Buddhists, it is a religion, form of a religion, although it hasn't got supreme God or the entity that governs the entire process. But it is a way. Yeah, it is a religion that they believe that is helping to have a good life, to have a control over our own self by our action. And that's their perception too. So these perceptions are all based on what we think, and that thinking process is again based on what we feel, and that feeling again because we have a contact with the things that we are come to contact with things. So our senses are learning it all the time, every day, every moment. Whichever community or a society that we are brought up, we are conditioned, and our senses learn from that. And that's how we perceive it as the reality. And whereas the practice of a meditation, in particular the Satipatthana, contemplating the body, contemplating the feeling, contemplating the mind, and contemplating the phenomena, is not about the concept that we already have or preconcepts, and we perceiving that as the truth. But this practice is to understand the reality as they are, with having a right understanding of things the way it is, rather than as we appear to see it. And what is the reality? The reality is that everything is conditioned aroused, and anything that is conditioned aroused is subject to change. And because of that subject to change, we cannot accept it, or we cannot believe that that is the entity unchangeable. But what is the trouble is that whenever there is a change, we don't want to accept that change. And that causes the trouble, that causes the suffering and dissatisfaction, and that is known as dukkha. And this is called three characteristics. So, what are the three characteristics? The number one is anicca, the impermanence of it, impermanence of things. The second one is the dukkha, or the suffering, or dissatisfaction. And the third, non-self, or the anatta. So realization of things as they appear like this, and seeing it with a natural way, understanding the reality pertaining to itself rather than appear to be, help us to change our perception. And that's why I normally say that practice of a meditation is to change our perception from what we are perceiving as the truth to the perception of the reality that is the natural truth. The moment when we change our perception towards the things that we see, that we hear, that we smell, that we test, and that we come across, perceiving in a reality, then that brings real this passion, ability to let go and be happy. The moment when we let go of all is the moment of gaining real happiness. And that happiness is born out of non-clinging, born out of realizing the reality pertaining to the nature. So that's why practice of a meditation is to understand that how things comes to contact with our senses, and then how the moment when the senses comes to contact with the sense object, it generates the sensations, and knowing that sensations properly rather than thinking about it, proliferating it, and how it works. And with that, we are understanding the perception of it. It's called a sanya, that all the perception that we have is also subject to change. And that's how we will be able to overcome and gain the real knowledge, the real perception that helps us to pave the path to the liberation. So I end here for tonight's reflection. And thank you everyone for following and listening this evening talks. May you all be well and happy. And just one more announcement I would like to make here at this today, that from Monday, this coming Monday, for 2 weeks, I will not be giving a talks, and there won't be any meditation guidance and chantings. So apologies for the 2 weeks time. So there will be no talks and no chantings and guided meditation. So you can listen the YouTube uploads and listen those uploads and practice. And in 2 weeks time, we can come back, and if you have any problems or questions, then we can discuss on that. So tomorrow, Sunday, would be my last day of giving a talk for 2 weeks. Okay, so just a reminder that from Monday we will not have any talks for 2 weeks. So thank you, and in a few moments time we're going to have an evening chanting and a guided meditation. So see you shortly. Satu.